Wing It Podcast, goosedigital.com, episode 50.
49.
49. All right. Who do we have?
Robin Kroll.
Chris O'Neill.
Jen Pugsley.
Michael Turksani. All right. Welcome back, insurance crew.
Hey, guys.
Oh,
We've been
Yeah.
IBAO. We've been AppliedNet. We've been everything's virtual this year, a million trade shows.
What are you going to do?
We were very, very good at building virtual booths now.
we are.
And
Building.
and yeah, and that's the topic of today, building versus buying, right?
Nice segue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice, Mike.
So yeah, no, thank you. So this was kind of came out of Robin's idea to talk about, I guess, one of the topics that was at IBAO this year, which I'll let you kind of introduce it in more detail, Robin, but really this concept of looking at the technology that your business, in this case, it could be a broker, an insurance broker, that wants to address a part of their customer life cycle, I guess is probably a good way to look at it. What part of the customer life cycle are you trying to automate or digitize or optimize through technology, and looking at, are you building your own software to make that happen, and or are you considering buying software and integrating to make that happen? So that was kind of the thrust of this call. We want to go over, or this podcast, we want to go over kind of the benefits, the opportunities that exist kind of in both areas, and obviously some of the challenges that can exist in both areas. So Robin, why don't you just take a minute to talk about, this session and where it went, and then that kicks us off.
Sure. I mean, it was a really interesting session where we had, 4 different brokers on a panel who had all had experience with both buying and building different technologies to help digitize their brokerage. And, it's certainly for any of us who have worked in the technology world, this is something that we've seen. This has sort of been that, this dilemma for many years. And it was really interesting to hear their experiences, because they had both been in situations where, they'd all been in situations where they had at times bought pieces of technology to integrate, and sometimes they worked. And then other instances where they went ahead and they built with also the same kind of results, that sometimes they worked really well and sometimes they didn't. And what I found really interesting was sort of that whole thought process. What were their initial types of challenges, and how did they initially address that? What did they learn, and how did that impact the next time they saw that maybe there was a technology gap and they had to make that decision? And it's something that we have those discussions also when we talk with prospects when they're trying to decide, if they go ahead and do something that's really custom, or they look for a technology that they might be able to adapt to their specific needs.
So there's no doubt that adding technology into your business, any business really, and I had a great call with one of our direct mail partners last night, who they've put a lot of digital workflows in place that sort of address the front end of their customer life cycle, as well as the back end of the customer life cycle. And there's no doubt that adding technology into these businesses can offer huge advantages, right? And that's sort of like almost an obvious or an umbrella term, but when you look at where to inject it, I think that strategy layer is probably where a lot of organizations, the light bulb moment happens, where, okay, we can see a world where we could literally create a huge cost savings if we were to sort this part of our back office out, or we could see a world where, wow, we could draw in more customers this way and handle them well, actually, if we put this type of technology in the front. But I think when we really look at the differences between building and buying, that's where, certainly in the insurance space, I think there's still this evolution occurring of how do we really do that? How comfortable are we buying and building? Probably more comfortable to some degrees and varying degrees But certainly on the build, probably not as comfortable, I would say, as buying. And I think the challenge that we see in this industry is that there's very few vendors to buy from in some way, right? Like when you look at some of the big BMS providers that are really providing the bulk of the software that exists, it's not like you have a ton of options, but there are things around the edges that are being built. So I wanted to pass it over to Chris for a minute, because I think the background that you have in accounting systems and ERPs is a good one here, because you obviously for many years saw that industry evolve and companies rolling their own or building on top of. And really, I want to sort of bring that lens in terms of like why, in the why section of build versus buy.
Yeah. So the first obvious thing is that these things tend to be built by firms that look at what's available, or at least what they perceive as being available, and decide, that they can do a better job, or they can make something that actually addresses their needs a little bit better. My experience in the ERP world was that, with platforms updating and changing, one of the biggest challenges to those that built their own was always around having, like, you're either tied to software or you were tied to the programmers who built the last version. So you're going to be tied to something, one thing or the other. You decide, you pick your poison, like which one you're going to be tied to. You're going to be tied to one or the other, because documenting software is no trivial task. And I'm sure, Mike, you can speak to that with the software that you've developed as well. So it's like, the first thing is functionality. And we know, like in our industry, in the insurance industry, how many products are out there that guys in the insurance world put together, developed and loaded on their own system, and discovered, you know what? I've got friends in this business that could use this as well. Before you know it, they're in the software business, and it can be something that has costs and challenges that are nothing like the insurance business. So you've got certain guys out there that have decided, you know what, I like what I built for myself, and I'm going to keep that going but I'm not interested in actually marketing and going out to market with it. And there's certain people like who have decided that that's the approach that they'd like to take. And I think what it comes down to, we're talking about how, staying ahead of and being a leader in a certain functionality, especially in software, it takes resource, like it takes budget, it takes research, time, expertise. It's not something that you set and forget. There's nothing that you set and forget anymore. But in the case of software, if you're not keeping up with security areas, you're not keeping up with customer expectations, all these things have to be ahead of the game. You have to be thinking 18 to 24 months ahead. So when you're in, whether it's the computer repair business or the software repair business, and you actually create a service solution, it has to be something you have to be looking ahead to what it is that is going to be required in that 18 to 24 month vision, or you're going to be stuck with a product that is that has holes in it, either security holes or functional holes that someone's going to come along and scoop. So I guess the experience that I've had has been, and again, it kind of comes back to, if you've had a really good experience and you can sort of build software that's got some long life, I mean, I think that's great, and I think you're going to be investing in that. If you kind of are looking to solve a particular problem that you don't see a solution out there right now, then it's like, you either have a short-term problem, or you've got something that is going to, basically be something you're going to have to be prepared to invest in on an ongoing basis.
So maybe I'll turn this over to Robin or Jen after I ask this side of it, because I think there's an opportunity that exists today that didn't exist, say 10 years ago, depending on, I guess, exactly the type of system you want to build, but where you can, like I said, launch a platform, do some development. There's a lot of great frameworks that are available. You can kind of get to market much faster than you could before, and you're not building a lot of the foundations that you would have had to build 10 years ago that would really add to your development cycle and cost. So there's that perceived opportunity to say, let's go out and just build our own system. Let's build our own lead management system, let's say. But I think one of the things I'd like to get your Jen and Robin's feedback on is that is it truly a unique workflow, or is it that you perceive that workflow as really unique to you? Is it that if you just bent a little bit and integrated kind of, let's say a Salesforce CRM, for example, or one of those CRMs and configured, as you were saying earlier, Robin, versus kind of customizing your own and rolling your own, would you be in a better situation? So it's sort of like challenging almost the thought process of my workflow is so unique to me that that's the way it's got to be. And we've seen that in the accounting and ERP world where, you've now just created a entirely custom workflow that, is literally, you have to manage that forever, so to speak, versus if we just bent it a little bit to the other side, and which is what that industry ended up kind of doing, is that more and more people said, why are we running our orders this way? Why don't we just kind of standardize around one, more or less a framework here and just make the minor tweaks. So, Robin, maybe, and Jen, maybe you guys can talk a little bit about, we think of like the touch points outside the BMS, right? Because I don't think people are building their own BMS here. How much of this needs to be 100% customized to their business versus taking something off the shelf? And by the way, we're not looking at one way or another here. We're just sort of challenging both sides of the equation. So one of you guys pick that up.
Yeah, Robin, I can comment a little bit on some of the, I think that, there's a kind of two different things in there. I think what is driving the customized conversation? Like, I think for sure in this industry, yes, there's definitely some things that are unique situations, particularly more on like the BMS or the rating side or some of the integration that is unique that maybe not just like an off the shelf would be able to solve. But then there's all these other things like lead management or marketing automation, or, I see it a lot with the quote and bind tools. It's like, what is really driving? Well, we're just going to build our own tool. We're bringing it in-house, right? And so I think if we look at those pain points and we start addressing those pain points, I think there's a lot surrounding, sort of like, this is going to sound really, harsh, but sort of like a lot of those initial experiences were like the blind leading the blind, right? So was it that the tool didn't have the capability that you bought, or was it that, you didn't know what you didn't know how to, implement a system, or, even the vendor relationship was hard to manage, right? So there was all these kind of like assumptions that were created of why it failed versus did it really fail? So there's that kind of piece. And there's the other piece about, Chris, you touched on this, like these things are continuous optimization, right? So one of the things I see as a pain point all the time is that we're in campaign mode. We need to go back to the tool to optimize. Broker or carrier doesn't own that tool. It's a over here tool that what we need optimized can't, fit on that development cycle. So then it's like, oh, wish we just owned our own tool. Or so I think, Robin, maybe you can comment on this too, but it's kind of where those drivers are coming from.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking it really from almost the beginning of the whole purchase cycle, and looking at the role that vendors or agencies play in really understanding what the insurance provider is trying to accomplish, right? And instead of saying, well, here is the solution, and we can kind of take that square peg and fit it into the round hole. It's a little bit hard to do, and yeah, it's not going to have the right words, but just pretend it's, this is what it means, and we can kind of squeeze your workflows in there. As an insurance provider, I might look at that right away and say, oh my God, this is not right. Like, you're not even understanding what I'm trying to do. So how can this software, this technology actually help me with my business that is unique. And I think that's something that's definitely changed. And that vendors are getting a lot more savvy and spending more time learning about the insurance industry, so that instead of presenting this is the technology and yeah, it'll do what you're supposed to do, it's actually telling the story of how it can help an insurance provider on whichever workflow that they're trying to accomplish, so that you're not kind of getting this area of concern right off the bat and you're not even getting any further. So I think that's one aspect of it, and then there is that flexibility of being able to make those modifications. I think the other thing that I'm seeing happening is the level of expertise that's on the insurance provider side. So you have people who understand technology, who can maybe connect the dots between a system that is not purpose built for the insurance industry and what they're trying to do. So they're really understanding, oh yeah, that, you know what, that workflow, even though maybe that technology was originally built for a retail situation, you know what, there are some aspects of that retail sales workflow that is very similar to what I'm doing in my business. And maybe it's minor little customizations or even modifications. And you know what, I can leverage this amazing technology and it's actually going to work for me. So I think those are some of the other things that are happening, that we're seeing some changes and ways of thinking about this as well.
Well, and Robin, it's interesting that we're talking about flexibility. So there's different types of pathways to that flexibility, right? When you are on a more best of breed system, there you just you have more opportunities to push the envelope in terms of flexibility. When you're with when your technology of choice is more, limited or limited to a smaller group of developers, that might not be as, or might not be as prevalent, or maybe it would.
Yeah, exactly. I think just to build on that real quick, Jen, is I think it kind of went back to what Chris said earlier, and I liked the idea is that you're going to be sort of pick your poison. You will be beholden to something here, either your dev team, or let's say in the case of, let's just use Salesforce as an example because people know that brand. Salesforce CRM. So, okay, we're paying a per user per month licensing. We hate the fact that we're paying a per user per month licensing with Salesforce, but I don't have that same beholden to a team here that is building my CRM, for example, right? And then the other thing that Chris touched on, which, I think you hit on as well briefly there, Robin, was, are you just doing the bare minimum to accomplish your workflow, or are you building in all the other elements that a platform that is off the shelf would have? And we've seen this, in some very basic situations where people are using email providers that are unique to the industry. And then they kind of realize, oh, my deliverability's having an issue and I can't get into the inbox all the time. And well, what that really means is that it's extremely expensive to run high quality email. And if you get an Acton or a HubSpot or a Pardot or whenever one of these like off the shelf bigger platforms, not bigger in terms of cost, but bigger in terms of the industry, they've taken care of that. So in the example of, let's say, a lead management system that you might build for your business and insurance, it's going to have security stuff built in. It's going to have baked in user state. So every part of your lead is just automatically going to be tracked on every single state. It's going to have built-in abeyances. It's going to have a bunch of stuff that you're going to have things that you want, and then there's going to be a layer where you may not even be aware of, right? And they may come up down the road. So I think to your point, Jen, it's probably, you could do it both, but it really comes down to the investment. Are you in a position to have that development team? And I want you to talk a bit about that next, Robin, because I know that came up in the session, is, are you really prepared to have the big enough team, or are you just having the one or two people to kind of accomplish your goals, or three people to accomplish your goals, and you're not spending time on security and data and analysis and all this other stuff, right? That's you're turning into a software shop, to your point, Chris.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I think there were two of the panelists who were discussing the fact that within their brokerage, they then they have two separate teams, right? So they have their insurance team. So you've got your producers, your CSRs, all the other support. And then you've got your technology team, who are actually your developers. And you're really running two very distinct businesses under one roof. With two, I mean, the skill sets are very different. The way they work, the challenges, everything is going to be really different. And that's really, if you want to go down that path of building your own and making sure that you are continuing to update it, both, Chris, to your point, for making sure that the software is updated, and then Michael, to your point, making sure that you're not just doing what you're want to do today, but what you want to do in 6 months and a year. You've got to really invest in those two teams continually to grow and build them. And then you're really, in some ways you're really running two different companies. So that, that can certainly be very challenging.
But it's got to be tempting, eh? If you're like a techie broker, and it's like, you know what,
Yeah.
stuff isn't so tough. It's like, it must be very tempting I wouldn't be one of those guys, but I can imagine, that it would be like, if you had the aptitude and you enjoyed it, and you just think, you know what, I don't want to spend all that money on Salesforce licensing. I could just build that myself.
Well, I think, there's another way to look at it. And I think we've seen this situation with a few, certainly on the carrier side, this tends to be, they've got both, big initiatives going on, build and buy, obviously. But on the broker side, the other kind of approach that we've seen is the really solid integration expertise, right? Having, we're not building a CRM, we're not building a lead management system. We are going to use something off the shelf, but let's actually have people that understand the data, understand how to really pull and leverage, from an analytics perspective, and understand how to integrate that really well. And when I say integrate, I don't mean, oh, this is now a massive process. But I mean plug and playing, solid on the data side. How do we get data out? How do we put data in? How do we make those connections? And just continuously be able to have high quality usage of the platforms that we have in place. But the core platforms themselves, okay, as long as you tell me it's a flexible workflow and I can route leads in a certain way, and I've got the baked in security, and it's, meets all my GDPR and Castle and future proofing from all that perspective. Well, now what I really would like to have is people that could load that data really well, understand the analytics. So I think that's another kind of, it's sort of like a hybrid mode where I still have technology people in the business, but they're not developing software. They're really integrating all the pieces and keeping that and doing the analysis around the back end, right?
And I think the difference also, Mike, you mentioned there's the core platforms, and then there's some of the other supporting platforms. And maybe that's another way to look at it, is that a core platform, maybe that's where you go out and you buy something, but you buy something that has that flexibility, that you can do, 98% of what you need to do. That's really going to be aligned to your business. And then there are other little pieces that maybe, there's other technologies out there, but they don't quite fit. And maybe that is something small that a developer could manage, and it adds a little piece. And then you have you have a little bit of both, but you're maximizing for those big, heavy platforms, all that expertise and all that investment, and then just focusing on the smaller ones. And I think of, what we do at Goose, right? That we sort of have that same philosophy, these big platforms that we go ahead and work with, the marketing automation platforms. We haven't built our own, right? We use best of breed. And yes, and same thing with Salesforce. Sometimes we have to make small customizations, but we love the fact that we have these partners who are investing in technologies continually, and that are, as we grow, their investments are matching what we're trying to do. But there are some little things that we want to be customized specifically to how we do things internally, and sometimes we do that development.
Yeah. Well, nothing is, makes you stay up at night and not get any sleep when your primary systems or a bunch of those systems that you've now built stop working, and there's a bit of a panic mode there. So I guess you can have that going on to various degrees if you're buying and integrating or you're building. But I think it's a good spot to leave it. I mean, we've had hundreds of meetings, obviously, as we like to say, and we've seen the range of companies here in this industry that have decided to go, in various directions. We didn't talk about strategy on this call. We only touched on it at the beginning very briefly. But I think that's kind of a big piece of this too, right? Is like, how do you think of your long-term strategy around technology? And if you are going to significantly roll your own or bring in your own people, it's probably a bigger investment than whatever you're paying per user per month for your CRM license. And that strategy around, why are we doing this, and where is it going to get us in 5 years needs to be a big part of the conversation. Yeah, I think that's a good spot. It was good.
All right. Good stuff, guys.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.